also particularly in the setting up of Ireland's first camp for people with visual impairment, Campabilities here in Kerry. So, over to you, Lauren.
How are you, Catherine? It's great to be here, and I just wanted to thank Tomas for inviting me. It's just such a pleasure. And it's such a great group of people, hearing what people do and meeting some of you all. But I also want to thank Ursula and her Campabilities staff for setting up a Campabilities here, because now we make more and more sports and recreation available to people with visual impairments in Ireland. And so, and I also want to, I'm giving my students extra credit to be here because it's 6 a.m. in the morning. And so I just wanted, if any of my students are on, I just wanted to thank you for being here. You know, for the streaming in. But so I've been teaching at the college at Brockport for 20 years. This is my 20th year, but before that I taught at the Perkins School for the Blind before I did my doctorate. And I taught at the School for the Blind. I learned a lot about how to teach kids with visual impairments clearly. And then when I started Campabilities, it's a sports camp, but I think it's so important to make sure we include that recreation, leisure, adventure piece into our camp. And I love it when somebody asks one of our kids, well, they just assume that you've never gone kayaking, you've never done stand-up paddleboard or rock climb, and our kids are all over it. And so I'll just share some of the things that we do at our camp, and kind of, if anybody has questions or comments, just please feel free to jump in along the way. But I just want to talk about our main purpose. So the programs that we run, and fortunately, over the years, we've written grants and we've gotten a lot of this equipment ourselves. Some things we borrow and some things we just buy and keep. But our main purpose of our adapted adventure activities is self-determination. I want the kids to have choices. If, for example, one of our kids went to a birthday party, and it was a rock climbing birthday party. They do that a lot. I don't know if they do that here. Like, they'll have adventure birthday parties. So this one young man who's blind, his mother was so proud, he went up the rock wall to the top 12 times during the birthday party. And that was more than any of the other kids at the birthday party, and he was the only one who was blind. And so, you know, that was his choice. He had that choice. And if he didn't know how to rock climb, that would not have been a choice. Some of our kids do ice skating birthday parties, and can they ice skate? If they can't, then that's not a choice. And so self-determination is so important related to our outdoor adventure activities. And the other one is self-help. I mean, our kids live at the dorms. They change themselves when they are going to be when they're going to be going swimming. They put their own life jacket on for kayaking. We encourage independence. And one of the things Hugo and I were talking about is that we teach so much independence, but when they go home, if their parents don't know what they can do, they're just going to fall back into their same dependent ways. And we had some parents come, this kid, totally independent, walked everywhere. The second his parents came, they took him by the shoulders and navigated him and pushed him everywhere he went. So all that whole week of promoting independence and his achievements was kind of down the toilet. So we're actually creating an independent scale, and we're going to give that to the parents so that they can take that and say, oh, okay, no more of navigating with the shoulders and doing for him, because he can do so much more on his own. We also promote a lot of socialization, and I'll share a lot of the pieces that we do during our program, but as everybody knows, that's one of our main goals is socialization. And one of the things I think is so important is the kids have something to talk about. Because a lot of times kids with visual impairments, if they're not given a lot of opportunities, and kids are talking, what do they talk about? So this gives them a lot more topics that they can talk about and brag about, and stories to tell and things like that. And then clearly it gives them a lot more choices. If somebody's offering archery, if somebody's offering kayaking or stand-up paddleboarding, they can clearly do that on their own. So this is one of our rock walls that we have at our camp, and the kids they can go up and down as many times as they want, and a lot of them become very independent. And a lot of our kids, I'm excited about this, we have a counselor and training program. They go from being one of our campers to being one of our counselors, and eventually they're not in the counselor and training anymore, they're just a counselor, which is really fun. We have a lot of counselors now. How many of you work with kids or people who have visual impairments, maybe among other disabilities as well? So everybody has somebody that has some visual impairment. Does anybody have any who's hard of hearing also, or visually impaired or deafblind? Yeah, and I know a lot of people that work with people who are deafblind. It's not the easiest approach, and so we've actually done a lot of research and work. Katrina here is one of our researchers, and we do this research on people who are deafblind, and we also bring in a lot of role models. And this is Cody Colchado, and he is blind, and he's very hard of hearing. He wears 2 hearing aids. And he's on the U.S. powerlifting team. And so this is our 7-person bike. Do you guys have a conference bike? It's really awesome. It's the greatest thing. And the kids absolutely love it. You don't need balance. You don't need vision. And everybody can ride together. It promotes socialization, independence. And Cody, so he's an inspirational speaker. He also does, he breaks boards. And what he did was he had the kids write all their fears on these boards, and then he broke them with his head and he smashed their fears. It was just awesome. But the cool thing about him is he's such a great role model, is that he can do everything. And so his self-determination is extremely high. He's not afraid. He's experienced many, many different programs and activities because he's invited. In the U.S., he's pretty famous. People invite him to a lot of their programs. And so, he's on the bike with everybody else riding the 7-person bike, and he doesn't really use sign. You just have to talk loudly when you're around him. But great guy. So what I'm going to talk about is a little bit what is Campabilities, and so these are the kind of the sports or the recreation activities I'm going to talk about. Our kayaking program, stand-up paddleboard, canoeing, rock climbing, archery. We do rollerblading, kick biking, the conference bike, horseback riding, and fishing. And so these are just our recreation or outdoor adventure activities that we do during the week of camp. And during the day, we do a lot more of like the sports like goalball and beep baseball and track and field, swimming, gymnastics, judo. That's what we do during the day. And the kids are assessed on all those, and then at nighttime, these are choice activities. And so I'm just going to talk a little bit more generally. And so this applies to all of our outdoor adventure programming. So when you have kids with visual impairments, I'm sure a lot of you already do this, we make sure they feel the whole piece of equipment. I mean, that 7-person bike, they probably don't have one at home. And so we have them feel the whole bike and understand how it all works, that someone is steering it, where are the tires, which direction is it going to go. So they're understanding the whole thing. For archery, a lot of our kids that have done archery, the only thing they've ever felt is the bow, the string, and the arrow. Some of our kids never knew, like somebody's like, I got the yellow, and they're like, what's the yellow? They don't understand the whole scoring system. So we have the kids feel the whole target, understand where the stripes and the point value, the point system that goes along with archery, because that's so important. And you also have to understand the distance. How far away is that? And then, I didn't realize this before, but some of the kids didn't understand how hard the arrow had to fly in order to stick into the target. And so we have the kids literally take the arrow and smash it into the target so they understand how far back they have to pull the bow. Because same thing with bowling. If you're bowling, if you don't know how far away those pins are, or that there's 10 pins and they're all really heavy, you don't understand that you have to really put a lot of energy into that force. And so they have to comprehend the whole entirety of the activity. I've had kids, and I'm embarrassed because I did this myself. The people that bring our horses bring one of those stairs that go up to the horse, and then the kids get on the horse, and then they ride the horse. So the only thing they know is the mane and the reins, and that's all they've ever felt. And if you can't see it, the magnitude of how big that horse is, and that there's eyes and there's a nose and there's a tail, and I had a child who was deafblind, and we had him. This was like the 3rd year he came to camp, but he never felt a horse. But if you ask him if he went horseback riding, he'll say, yeah, I know, but he doesn't know because he never felt that horse. And so the day he was feeling the whole horse and like putting his fingers up the horse's nose and feeling the eyes and the mane, there were people crying because they realized that he didn't ever know what a horse was. And at that point, I think he was like 13, was he? And so that to me is one of the most important things. I don't care if it takes an hour and a half. We have to make that time for them to understand that whole activity, because without that, then they're not going to be able to meet the goals and objectives of the activity. I mean, their archery is going to be not as aggressive. The horseback riding is not going to be as engaging. And so feeling the equipment, also if you have a tactile map of the area, like if you're doing a hike, having a tactile map of the hike, or if you're playing a game that's in a field or a court, having them feel that area. So a tactile map of that if you're doing orienteering is really important. And then the big thing is, how does it all fit together? I mean, how many of you heard kids say, this is so dumb, right? This is so dumb. Why are we doing this? Well, if it's so dumb, I'm like, well, what don't you understand? Like, what's the point? Well, that's what we have to teach them. What is the point? I mean, maybe you're just kayaking because it's enjoyable to be out there. But we also want them to feel independent and feel the joy of being able to kayak by themselves, if that's possible. Okay? The other thing is we have to explain all the terminology. And when you say something like the reins and the bit and the, what's that called? When you're kicking the horse? Stirrups. What is that? What's it called? And what is the purpose of that? Because a lot of times kids who are sight can just see it and people say it and they know it. And you say, okay, well, just kick the stirrups or put your feet in the stirrups. Well, what are the stirrups? You might have felt it, but you didn't know that's what that is. Do you see what I'm saying? So you have to make sure they understand the terminology. Okay, what's this? What's this? And so making sure they understand it and how it all fits together. Okay, like, for example, the archery. How the bow fits into the arrow, how that fits into the target, and all the different terms that we use in archery. And then rock climbing, of course, you have all the rock climbing equipment and your harness and your clip and all the terms that you use when you're saying, okay, ready, climb. So we have to make sure they understand all of that, and all the terminology. And then the other thing is, how many of you have worked with kids and they're really afraid? Like, even though it doesn't seem like they should be afraid, they're really afraid of the activity. And so a lot of times we'll just do a small part of the activity. And one of the things we found in our research with kids who are deaf and blind, because we were also looking at, if a child uses tactile sign, does anybody work with kids with tactile sign? They use sign language in their hand? Yeah, so if they're using tactile sign, and then they have their hands on something like a paddle, how is somebody going to tell me when we're stopping or when we're going to turn around or if there's danger? And so building in that time that you're going to give them feedback is so important. Same thing when we were in the pool. The kids are like, well, how am I going to know if I'm doing it right? When are you going to tell me? So there's a time when you'd stop. You'd say, okay, in 5 times, then you're going to stop and you're going to give them feedback. So starting off slowly is always helpful, especially if kids are afraid. We don't want to make them more afraid. Like, there's discrete skills, like archery is a discrete skill. Like, it's very, like you start and end, and then you can give them feedback. But there's other things like rock climbing and kayaking, stand-up paddleboarding, where it's a continuous skill, and if you don't build in communication time, then they're not going to know when you're going to stop and communicate. So that's really important, to build in that communication time if kids use other alternate language. And then also, if kids are afraid, I think it's important to discuss their fears and anxieties with them. I had one girl, and she was so afraid to go underwater in the pool. And we're like, why? And finally, we were like, why are you afraid to go underwater? She was terrified. She thought if she went underwater, people wouldn't be able to see her in a pool. And so that idea that water is clear and you can see underwater did not occur to her. And so, like, just understanding, I was in a kayak at the Potomac River in Maryland, and it was gushing water, and I was in with 3 kids, with just me. And one of the kids kept reaching out, and Christopher, you're going to tip us over, and it's just us. And he thought, because people had said they could see fish, he thought he could feel the fish in the water. So that I'm like, okay, you can't feel the fish. They're far enough under the water that you won't feel them. So bring your hands in. We'll catch one, and you can feel the fish. So when we were fishing, of course, we caught a fish, and he only had fish sticks before, so he didn't know that the shape of a fish or the feel of a fish, fish sticks, not the same as a fish. So we let him hold it, and he's like, I feel the eyes. I can feel the tail. And he's feeling it. And I'm like, oh, God. So we named that fish Lucky. Oh, yeah. It's one of our, why was he kissing the fish? Oh, yeah. So one of our other kids, another time, one of our kids, he never felt a fish before. And was he feeling it with his lips? He was licking the fish, yeah. So, yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot. So that was like important to learn appropriate behavior with like when you're feeling the fish. So, but you know, like feeling that fish though, and understanding that when you're going fishing, understanding where the mouth is and understanding what you're trying to do. I mean, to us that might seem intuitive, but for kids with visual impairments, it's not intuitive, and it's really important for them to learn. I don't think we should sacrifice many fish for that, but I mean, there's a point where I actually replaced that fish for the next time he came back because I didn't want that same fish to have that experience again. Because he had to go back and check on it a couple times while everybody was rotating around. Yeah. And so also, some of you probably already do this, but to teach the whole and then the part and then the whole, and I've been in this field a long time, and I used to just think, we have to task analyze, we have to break it down, we have to teach the kids the parts. But if you only teach the parts, they're not going to figure out how the whole fits together. And so we have to somehow, some things are more difficult in the beginning to teach the whole. Okay? For example, rock climbing. Okay, so the idea is you want to try to climb as high as you can. How will you know where the top is if you can't see it? So the whole of climbing to the top. So what we typically have done is had somebody else climb and then bang the wall so they're hearing and understanding how high is that wall, where are the handholds, and how do you get to the top, and then when do you know you're there, and is it still successful if you climbed halfway or you didn't climb all the way to the top? And so the whole of rock climbing and how do you get there, we have to teach that. And so every skill that we teach, we do whole, part, and then whole again. And so horseback riding is having somebody riding the horse, feeling the horse, having somebody ride, understanding where you're going and what you're going to be doing and why you're doing it, and then them doing it themselves. And we do the same thing when we're teaching beep baseball, which, do you guys know what beep baseball? It's a baseball game with the, you know what baseball is. Okay, so it's just beep baseball with a ball that beeps. Teach that whole and then the parts of it and then the whole again. And then the other thing I think that's important is that it doesn't only have to be an adult that sighted guides the kids. I mean, especially if kids are doing a school program, that it's so important to have them socialize with peers, teaching the peers how to sighted guide them, how to get them to navigate places, and having their peers be part of their process. Okay. And also I think it's really important to set goals, and this goes with this one as well, is I'm so tired of people thinking, oh, if you have a disability, it's okay if you just participate. That's the end goal. It's just kayaking. Isn't that nice? He's kayaking. Oh, isn't that great? You know, he's doing archery. But you know what? This kid might want to be on his archery program or his or the Paralympic archery team or the biathlon team. So why aren't we having him make goals and seeing if he can do the best he can do? All right, stand-up paddleboard. How long can you stand up on that? How far do you want to go? How long do you want to do that? And having kids really have achievement, because a lot of times they go back to their schools and that teacher's like, oh, that's so nice that you're participating. It's like, no, I want to do what everybody else is doing. And that's the right that our kids have. They have the right to do what everybody else is doing. And sometimes I think people forget that, because it might have taken, you know, sometimes to set up one program, a coordinator might have to go over so many barriers, and they're like, oh, good, we're going to take some pictures, and we're going to show the people that gave us the grant, and we're going to show them that we did it. Well, I want to know how many times did they do it, and how far did they go, and how much did they gain from that. And so I don't want us to forget, and also teach the other people that you're working with, that the kids can achieve. They don't just have to go through the motions. I mean, there are points where sometimes, I mean, how many of us, let's face it, you go out for a bike ride just to go for a bike ride to clear your head, or you go for a kayak just to get out to kayak. We don't always have to have goal setting and achievement, but that should be a choice, and we should learn how to do that, and we should teach our kids how to do that. Okay? And then the biggest thing is they should just have fun. I mean, get them to a point where they feel competent enough, confident enough, and not self-conscious, which is another whole thing is, making sure kids learn the appropriate way to do things so people aren't laughing at them or making fun of them. Because I know, especially sometimes when our kids are running or walking or they're doing something wrong, and other kids, instead of telling them, they're just laughing at them like, oh, look how he's doing that. That's why we also have to make sure they're doing it the correct way, because it's not fun if you're going to be self-conscious when you're doing an activity. Anybody have anything you want to add? General? Just any general overview? So now I'm just going to talk about some of our specific sports. Oh, that's me. Oh, that's weird. Okay. I'm going to talk about some of our specific sports here, and I'm really proud of this. Anybody have a 3-person kayak? They're kind of hard to find. You have a 3. Now, what I was finding is the counselor, the coach was in the back, and then our camper was in the front, and there was no socialization. And so I was thinking, it'd be really cool to have a 3-person kayak. So we actually wrote some grants and did some fundraisers, and we got 2 of these 3-person kayaks. And so now the 2 kids that are in the front are friends, and they got to pick each other. And then the counselor's in the back just to make sure they're going the right way. And now, they can chit-chat, and the counselor's supposed to stay out of the conversation and let the kids connect. And so when we start with kayaking, the first thing we have them do is feel the whole kayak on land. We have them feel the whole thing, understand how it fits together, understand where they're going to sit, where the counselor's going to sit. And then on land, they get in the boat, and we practice, because it is much harder to do hand-over-hand or tactile teaching in the boat when the counselor's in the back and the kids are in the boat. And then we use what's called physical guidance, where you can move them through the motions and showing them, or the child can feel somebody else appear or the counselor doing the paddling, and that's called tactile modeling, when they feel the counselor doing that. And then, so once they're in the boat and they get the hang of it, and you're saying, okay, you're good to go, you're ready to kayak, then we show them the dock, and they get in the boat. And then what we do is, as you know, kayaking always works best when you put your paddle in perpendicular instead of flat against the water. So you can't see it here, but later on I'll show you where we put tape, bright tape, so any kids who have some vision, they can see where the handholds are. And any kids who can't, they can feel the tape, and that's where their hand goes, because if you put the paddle directly in the water, then it'll be the appropriate positioning. And so the tactile markers on the paddles are really key. And you can do them any way that whatever suits your kids the best, but the tactile markers are important. And then also what I notice is that some kids will paddle and then stop, and then the water will drip down. They're soaking wet. And so trying to listen to the appropriate cadence so that they don't get totally wet, and understanding whether it's a verbal assistance or whether they're just listening to somebody else's cadence so that they're not getting soaking wet when they're kayaking. That helped some of the counselors too. They were like, huh, I didn't know that. So so they stayed dry because we taught them something new. And then also we had to talk about what to do in case of emergency. Now we're lucky that our campus is right on the Erie Canal. So this is the Erie Canal. It's not that the water doesn't flow too fast. The boats come by are very respectful, so it's not really a dangerous situation. But what would they do in case there was something dangerous that happened? So we teach them some emergency situations. All right, the other thing, this brand has cup holders. I'm just telling you, it's a good kayak. But they're hard to find. Cup holders. It's really a big deal. Also, during the movement, I think it's important to tell the kids when they when they are doing the appropriate movement, because I think a lot of times kids are like, is this right? Is this right? The feedback of when they're doing it right is really important. And if a correction has to happen, you have to try verbally to give them corrections, or pull over, to the side so that you can give them some physical guidance just to be safe. A lot of times, especially if you had already taught it on land and you taught the correct terminology, you can correct the performance with just a verbal cue. But if that's not working, sometimes we'll pull back over to the dock so that because we have all of our what do we call it, waterfront staff on the dock. So we might say, okay, can you just show Josh how to do this correctly? And then they'll show them, and then we're off again. So. And then the other thing is, so if we're helping them with physical assistance at the beginning, then we do want to fade any of that physical assistance so that they're independent and that they can socialize, because it's hard to socialize if somebody keeps having to tell you what to do. And so we want to get them to a point where they can kayak comfortably and then chit-chat with their friends and enjoy the outdoors or hear whatever we're talking about the environment. Okay? And so those are just some of the tools we use to teach our kayaking. We have single kayaks, we also have double kayaks, and now we have these triple kayaks. And so that's been a really great program for us. And then now we actually have them in a shed on campus, so we can run programs as much as we want during the year whenever we have people that are interested. And actually, meeting with the group to start an adult camp for adults who are deaf-blind, that's going to happen this coming at the end of this summer, which will be cool. And so stand-up paddleboarding is something, I don't know if it's getting popular here, but it's really popular now in the U.S. Another popular thing is doing yoga on stand-up paddleboards. That's a big thing that people are doing. And so we got this big grant, and I really think stand-up paddleboarding is such a conducive activity for people who are visually impaired. And so this is this is probably how you teach it, just with people who are sighted. So what we do is we start on land, and we start with the kids with feeling the board, feeling the paddle, understanding how it all fits together. And a lot of times, if a child's blind, they'll feel somebody else doing the stand-up paddleboarding so that they understand what it is. And then having them just start off kneeling on land, and then go to standing on land and showing that they understand how to do the strokes standing up. And then we actually have them practice kneel to stand, so that that can transfer into the water as much as possible. And then when they get into the water, they do the same thing. They start off kneeling, and they practice with the paddling, and then stand up. And our kids have gotten so good at this, they wouldn't get off. So we ended up getting we got a donation to get 2 more, so we have more so that the kids will have more opportunities, so that they don't have to get off if they don't want to. Because that's the point, is if they really like it and they're good at it and I set a goal, I don't want to say, hey, this is Sam. Sam, come on back. You have to share it with somebody else. Well, I'm not done my goal yet. So the more you have, the more kids can participate. And so how many of you do stand-up paddleboarding in your programs? Anything you want to add? Okay, all right. But it is such a fun... Oh, go ahead.
We use inflatable boards, and they're as stiff. I was just wondering what...
Oh, no, we don't use inflatable boards. These are... I'm not sure what they're made out of, but they're hard. And actually, the new ones we got are actually a little wider. I liked having them a little wider so the kids felt more stable. And actually, it's funny because we have 4 Campabilities in New York, and one of the ones in the Adirondacks, they got the wider ones, and I went out on this lake, and I said, this is so much more comfortable because it's more stable, so I got 2 of the wider ones. So, but these are so conducive. And the other cool thing is stand-up paddleboarding you can do, well, I should back up. I don't know if I have a picture of this. A couple of our kids also have cerebral palsy, and so we had the counselor come, and she would sit behind them and hold them and then help them to stand up until they were comfortable with being independent on the board. And some of the kids took a long time with the counselor. So that's the other nice thing about these, is they're very sturdy. They hold 2 people if you need it. And that was also conducive. If a child can't do it by themselves right away, then having a counselor on it with them to hold them and walk them through it at first is fun. And taking a few spills isn't a bad thing either. It's hot. It gets hot in New York in the summer. Okay. So for our canoeing, we actually, the process of our canoeing is the same we do as for the kayaking. So of course we have one canoe that just stays on land. That's just the teaching canoe. And then now maybe you can see this. This is the tape that we have. He's not holding this correctly, but but this is the tape that we have. So it's bright. So any child who has low vision can also see where their hand is supposed to be, and then put the paddle in at that point. And so and usually, again, the counselor usually sits in back to steer, but we want to teach the kids how to steer too, so sometimes under controlled situations, we'll have the kids sitting in back and doing the steering themselves. Now, when we first started teaching canoeing, this was the instinct of all of our counselors. They gave the counselors the paddles, and the kids just sat in the canoe, like this one on the right here. She just wanted to sit there, and nobody gave her a paddle or encouraged her to paddle. Well, if you don't get to paddle, you're not going to know if you can do it or not. You know, so now every child has to try and practice it. And then if you want to, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. But I want the kids to feel independent and feel as competent as possible with the canoeing. And now that outrigger canoeing is part of the Paralympics now, there's very likely that they could make this a Paralympic sport. So, you know, I really want them to grasp it and see if that's something that they want to pursue. And so you see how we have, like, the kids are stand-up paddleboarding in the back. I mean, it's just so cool looking out and seeing all the kids out in the water doing all these water sports. It's so much fun. And then we do our rock climbing. Now, rock climbing, it's so there's so many variables that we really have to take a lot more time to teach the kids the whole. Of course, having somebody climb up, touch the top, understanding the magnitude of how big that wall is, and then also having them understand what the whole purpose of the harness is for. And the big thing, which I'll never forget, I made a big mistake where I was we were taking the kids to a rock wall, and I was explaining to the kids, you know, when they're going to come down, how you sit down, how you kind of rappel down the wall or walk. I use the term walk down the wall. Well, a couple of our kids were deaf also, and they missed it. They missed the direction. So one of the girls, she climbed up to the top, and then she looks down and she's like, okay, Nada, what do I do? You know, she was at the top, and I hadn't taught her what to do, and so we had to teach a guy really quickly how to sign to her what to do. He climbed up, he signed in her hand, and he guided her down, but that was frustrating to me because I realized that you really have to teach everything at the beginning to everybody before they go up and practice. You know, practice short little bursts up, maybe halfway, come down. And I actually have the kids get in the rappelling position on the bottom and show me what they're going to do at the beginning. And so understanding the whole wall, and then also the searching techniques. And the other thing you have to make sure is, maybe I have this on the next slide. Oh, here we go. A lot of times the kids are up there, everybody's cheering for them. There's 5 people yelling to them where to put their hand. Justin, just move it, Justin, and everybody's yelling, and he doesn't know which one where to feel. And so one of the things, my rule now is only one person gets to yell to a child. They can help them and verbally assist them. And actually, we've even, if they get somebody that's tall with their cane, I've even had them like tap the cane on the different rocks so that they know where to put their hand. Because that's not cheating, because if they had sight, they would have known where that rock was, right? And so, oh yeah, so, and the other thing is, I know you probably have this at the top, but there's either a bell or something at the top of the wall to let the kids know where the top is. I had people that they had a doorbell at the top, you know, something, so that they understand how high that is. And then so we discussed the clock system, and so I have a slide here. Some people use the clock system. I don't know, how many of you do rock climbing with your kids with visual impairment? You do? And so I don't know if you do, where this one showed the clock system using the whole body. So this would be 12, then below your feet would be 6. Here, let me show you this. This way that's an entire body clock system where you might say, okay, reach to your right hand, reach to 2 o'clock. And this is not a bad system, although some people would use where you have the whole clock at your right hand, you have the whole clock at your left hand. So I might say, here is, I'm trying to think, 9 o'clock. So you're going to reach to 9 o'clock. You're going to reach, or maybe you'd reach lower, but then you'd need a clock system for each appendage. Do you know what I'm saying? As opposed to your whole body. So you have to decide with that person whether you're going to do the clock system with the whole body or with each hand. And I think a lot of it depends on how close the rocks are together, the person's experience, what they understand. Also, this guy's really big in this picture. But if you have a child that's a lot smaller, they might really only be able to get the clock system around that hand. Like this might be too big. So it all depends on your situation. So again, the clock system might vary per person. And again, the one person to coach the child at a time is a big deal. I think that's important. And then discuss and practice that walking down the wall before you do it, and so that they understand what to do. Okay, I think that's really important. So does anybody want to add anything to this rock climbing? I know a lot of you raised your hand. Linda, you have anything you want to add? No? You're good? Okay.
Small tactile on the molds, so that we know where they're going. That was working as well very well.
So what do you mean small tactile? Like?
You know, when they're climbing, there's next to the handhold, there's a tactile, so they will know where is the next handhold.
Oh, you mean like a piece of tape or a rope?
Exactly.
That is a great idea. What's your name? Kasha. That's a great idea. I did see that somewhere. So when their hand is on a handhold, you can actually feel where the next one is. I love that idea. Yeah, so it kind of gives them a tactile cue where the next one is.
And more independent as well.
Yeah, when it's our own wall, because we're in the process of getting our own rock wall, we will be able to do that. We rent it now, so I don't know if they would. Actually, that would probably help people who are sighted as well, like knowing where to go from that one. Tomas.
Just at the wall in Dingle, where we bring out young people with visual impairment and other groups to take part in our sessions. A number of the handholds are actually shaped like little animals, like frogs and fish.
Oh,
and
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like that. So when we're telling the children reach up, it's reach up for the frog. And so they have an expectation of it, which is a bit more motivated because it's fun. But also they have an idea what shape it's going to be in terms of.
Right.
Because they felt the frog lower down, or they felt the fish, or something else. So it gives them an idea of what shape the handhold is going to be.
No, that's a great idea. That's a fun one. Would be good for birthday parties. Anybody else? These are all good ideas. Okay. So for our archery, again, like our kids absolutely love archery. And actually, our archery instructor is blind herself. She actually was really involved in hunting with her family, and she had surgery on her back and became blind. And at first she was very bitter, and she wasn't sure how she'd do it. But then she kept on doing archery and teaching archery, and she actually still goes hunting. She's caught a bear. Now, I'm not promoting this, but she caught a black bear, and she caught antelope. She goes on hunting trips, and her husband is her sight person. And so, but our kids love archery. They love the challenge of archery, and of course they like the discrete motion of it, is that you do it and then you can get feedback right away. And they usually, like I said, to feel the target first and to learn the point system and the colors and where they are. I think that's important. Understand the bow and arrow and each component part, and with the names and the purposes, like we said. And again, taking that arrow and banging it into the target is really helpful. And then show the participant, they have to have that muscle memory of how, when they shot it and it stuck, how far back they had to pull, so that they can remember, oh yeah, I pulled it all the way back to my chin, or I pulled it all the way back to my nose, and making sure that they understand how far back they have to pull the arrow to hit the target. Okay? A lot of our schools do archery as part of their secondary curriculum, so it's so important for them to learn that. And then there's various ways to aim, and so if kids can understand, because a lot of people say, oh, you're doing archery. They wouldn't even do archery with kids who are sighted, some of these programs. And in our country, it does, on your insurance, it adds a little bit more to your insurance. But I'm thinking, I don't care how much it costs, because they need to learn that. And so if they have some vision, we have them use their vision for the target. We also have auditory cues. We can either put a beeper behind the target. I've also had bells where there's a rope, so that nobody has to stand there and ring the bells. A rope, and then you can pull the rope and then have the bells ringing. And then we also have our archery instructor's husband developed this sight that goes on the, you probably have these, but it goes on the bow, so the person can look and then tell them right, left, up, and then help them with their aiming. And so anybody have any other ways that you teach archery or use? Tell me your name.
There's a couple of things I'd add onto that. One is the fear of the release.
Oh, yeah.
Use stretch bands initially, so they just get used to not kind of flinching. Just use the simple stretch
Oh,
band.
that's a good idea. So just to teach them what it would feel like to let go of that.
And the other thing is what's called a tactile sight. This is like a tripod that you have on the top of the tripod, like a small spring loader. They have on the back of the hand, so the hand always stays in the same place.
Is it on the bow or is it?
No, it's like on a camera tripod. So
Oh, yeah, yeah, okay.
Set it up to the height, and then you have that on the back of the hand, so that hand doesn't, same thing, doesn't move.
So it's more steady. Does it come, I saw one, it came in like a wooden box and then you stand in the middle?
You can make a wooden T-frame.
Right,
to
right.
sit into.
Okay, but is that available commercially, do you know?
You just need a camera tripod.
Like just like a camera tripod, okay.
Yeah.
That's a really good idea. Yeah, and that's going to help, especially if you have different height participants. That's a great idea.
In the same vein, you can use a crossbow on the tripod,
Oh,
which, certainly if somebody's using a wheelchair,
that's much
makes it
easier.
slightly easier.
Yeah. Okay, so crossbow, we have a tripod.
You actually need a firearms license for crossbow. It's the same level as an AK-47.
That shouldn't be any problem in the States.
You can get that better more than a driver's license. Yeah.
About 10.
Yeah. And so this is our archery instructor, and she's amazing. What she does is, I'll make sure my time, okay, good. What she does is when the kids come up to her, and she's like, oh, hi, Amanda, how you doing? And she just feels their shoulders, and she feels their arms. And then she has this, it's a wooden, it's where all the bows hang up in size order. And so she feels the child, and then she keeps talking to them, and then she goes over to get the bow of their size, because she just felt them. She brings it over, and then we have the auditory background, and she teaches them how to shoot. And people don't believe that she's blind, I mean, because she's just so seamless at that. And then we put balloons on our target, if you can see that. And the good thing is when they do hit the target and the balloons pop and they can hear it and they're cheering. But the arrow can hit the target and not hit a balloon and still hit the target. It's not as exciting. I'm like, you still hit the target. So then when we go over to the target, they can feel that they still hit the target. But it is really fun having the balloons. And I noticed that the sighted kids absolutely love having the balloons on the target too, because then they get that double feedback. And so basically we just take a nail, we just tie the balloons around a nail and just put it right in the target. So that's not that hard to do, okay? But I just think, Sharon Pagel is our archery instructor's name, and to me, she just shows me the possibility of somebody, taking back her life after she lost her visual impairment and really doing what she loves to do, which is really admirable. Anybody want to add anything to archery? Those were good ideas. Okay. And so for our rollerblading, the kids absolutely love it, and they can do it morning, noon, and night. They can do it whenever they want. But we make sure they wear does it big here, rollerblading? Not really? Oh, it's a big, I mean, it was it was a really big thing in the U.S., and now a lot of kids still rollerblade. People rollerblade around campus. But if that's something that kids like, we have always make them wear the protector, the wrist protector, and then the knee and elbow guards when possible. Helmets. But basically they just start out holding on to somebody else and then or holding on to a wall or a guide rope, and then once they get the hang of it, just giving them an auditory cue where to go. I mean, sometimes the counselor will just be in front of them and they'll just rollerblade right behind their counselor and they can be independent. Okay? But I mean, everybody falls when they're rollerblading, right? So they just get up and keep going if they need to. Okay? Kick bikes. And now, how many of you, this is a kick bike. Does anybody use these kick bikes? I'm telling you, this is the best. It's I don't know, the brand name is called, it has mountain bike, the front and back wheel are bike tires. And then there's brakes, like a bike brakes. And the thing, I was in Finland, we had Campabilities in Finland, and I was in Finland and I saw people riding these. And when I tried it, the thing is that you don't need to have that great of balance, because you can just stop, you can just put your feet down and stop. Unlike a bike where it's a little bit scarier because you're a little higher up. You're right near the ground. And so this boy's blind, and so what happened was I was obsessed with this kick bike. And yeah, I couldn't stop talking about it. So I ordered one night in the middle of the night, because they have they're from Finland, but they have a distributor in the U.S. So anyway, then I went to went at the School for the Blind was where we had our camp. And I went in to go get the tandem bikes for tandem biking. And I look, and they had a whole fleet of 10 kick bikes at the School for the Blind. And I'm like, this must be good for people who are blind. So I took one out, and this boy happened to be from Latvia. They had a bunch of kids from Latvia because they didn't have a camp there at the time. And he felt the bike, and he understood how to use it. He didn't speak English, so I just felt the bike, and also he just took off by himself. And he could automatically do it right away, and all he needs is somebody in front of him to do it. And so basically you're just pushing like you do on one of those, we call them razor blades or scooters, right? And you do, it's the same thing, but the nice thing is the brakes are on your hand, so it really is a nice lead up to a bike. Oh, they call them striders? Okay, or balance bikes? So maybe it's a different brand then, but the same concept? And I think it's a great outdoor activity for kids with any kids, but kids with visual impairments. The other thing I noticed, because I ride mine to school, and I noticed it's a really good workout for your legs, and it's fun. It's fast. Okay, so the kick biking. I can't say enough about being on a kick bike. Anybody want to add anything to that? So for kids with visual impairments, really they just needed someone in front of them to give them the signal. Okay. Oh, this conference bike. I saw this at a conference too. Yeah. Yes.
How are they guiding? Are they looking backwards?
Oh, actually, I was on a kick bike. So the person in front could be on a kick bike too. I just thought that was the best way to guide, just because then you're knowing what they're going through. But you could run. You could be on your own bike in front of them. You could be on we have some people that were on rollerblades in front of the person. But just as long as you could go as fast as they're going.
So you just,
I would say saying his name, George, 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 or saying follow me, or we'd be talking and you just follow my voice. Okay.
What kind of environments are you doing that?
Oh, that one was just on an empty road. And actually, they also had a sidewalk that was pretty. You have to do it somewhere that's pretty, not very too much traffic. Okay, Katrina.
So in the context of Campabilities, she gets a huge parking lot reserved for the week, so it's empty and safe. And then what's happened over the years is this past year at Campabilities, they all prepared as a group to go on a ride all the way around campus on either tandems or singles. And one of the things that happens at Campabilities is kids who wouldn't typically be allowed to ride a single bike independently because their vision's too poor, got to because they were in a group and they practiced how are you going to know how to follow, how are we going to brake. So for the first time this last year, I think it was the first time, we saw groups of kids and with visual impairments and blindness with counselors with vision and some counselors who are also blind taking huge rides that were 2 or 3 miles long all the way around campus. And that's not something they'll do independently on their own. But when they go home, many of them have encouraged their parents to get tandem bikes. We sometimes loan them out to families for the year so they can continue to ride.
Thank you. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, we do the big campus ride. That's a fun.
Empty parking lot.
Actually, the also nice thing is the visibility when we go out, when we get off campus and ride around the community is so awesome, because people that might not have even known we were there or know what people can do will get to see what they can do when they're out in the community. This conference bike is very popular on campus, and I guess we get a lot of tweets when we're out there. But like I said, this is an awesome experience for the kids. In the U.S. dollars, it was $14,500. I got a grant because the conference bike met there's 9 components of, it's a long story, but the expanded core curriculum is the curriculum for kids with visual impairments, and it met like 6 of the 9 components of the ECC. So in our grant, we wrote that about, understand the technology, socialization, independence, mobility, self-help skills. They put the helmet on themselves. They adjust the seat themselves. And so they gave us all the money for the conference bike. So this has been a joy. We put the Campability stickers all over it and ride it around campus. And again, even kids with low vision, kids who are blind could steer just if somebody's telling them where to go, as long as it's a quiet road.
How many people do you get on?
Well, it's a 7-person bike, but if you notice, this is a different program that I run. So some of the kids with more severe disabilities are just sitting on people's laps. Never rode a bike before, but they got a chance to ride on this bike. So this one, I think there's 10 people on the bike there, because there's 7 people and then the 3 kids on people's laps. If you go to the conference bike website, I think it's in Germany, they actually put a couple of little kids in the middle too. So they had the 7 people and they had some kids just sitting in the middle. Katrina.
So there's a center ring that's fixed, and that's what the 6 people
Right.
as a break.
Yeah, if you can see this person.
Pedaling, there's an independent chain for each person, so they're not linked. So if a child doesn't feel like pedaling, they just want to be experiencing the bike, they can. It's got beautiful action. Two people can power it.
Yeah, you could. Sometimes we ride around campus and pick people up and drop them off at their house. Like, so, you know, two people could ride it, as long as one person doesn't jump off and go to a party and then I'm by myself. You know, just saying. So, any other questions about the conference? But it's just great for programs for people with or without disabilities. If you can do a fundraiser or get the money, it's terrific. They have different kinds of bikes too. If you look at their website, so there might be some maybe more affordable, smaller ones too. And then there's horseback riding, again, like I was describing earlier. It's such a great opportunity for anybody with or without disabilities. But again, making sure that they get that chance to feel that horse and get that tactile input of what you're doing. What is this thing that you're on? And I just don't think it's fair to the horse or fair to the person if you don't give them that time to understand what they're doing. And then fishing is something we absolutely, we have a group of kids, they absolutely love to fish. If you go on our website, you'll see, we have a daily newsletter, and we have the daily fish count. And we count how many fish we caught, and so like a lot of times the parents will go on and see. But again, for fishing, feeling the whole pole, I mean, knowing that the hook is sharp and it can hurt people is very important when you're just going and talking to people and you're not minding where the hook is. I think that's really important. And then also, I think a lot of times people always put the worm on for the kids or cast for the kids. I think that's part of fishing. You have to learn how to put the worm on. You have to learn how to cast yourself. You have to learn how to bring in, how to reel the fish in yourself. And I want them to learn how to take it off themselves too. And so that's a process, and it takes time. And even if you have to have somebody else catch the fish so that they learn how to take that out before they fish, that's okay too. And so, you know, the timing of the cast, how many of you have tried to teach fishing with kids with visual impairments? Anybody? The timing is a little difficult when you're trying to learn how to cast. My rule of thumb has been now, when it gets even with your body, then that's when you hit the button to cast. That's kind of when it gets close to that point, cast or hit the button. But again, this is showing the hand over hand at the beginning for the timing, because that is a little bit of a difficult motion, is the timing of that. And actually this is cool. This one counselor, she was a camper and she's visually impaired, and she's on one of the top baseball teams in our country. She's on the Long Island Bombers, so she's a great counselor. But then she's teaching hand over hand how to do the fishing. So it's been a fun journey. And actually, we started our fishing because one of our campers said to me, he's like, "Lauren, how can we be on the Erie Canal and we don't even have fishing?" And I was like, "You're right. All right, you're in charge." And he bought all the fishing rods. He was in charge of the fishing for the first few years of it, and now he's a big advocate for disability rights at his university. So he told me his first advocacy was with me at Campabilities, and like that was a cool thing that he did. He got the leadership to do that. So does anybody else want to add anything about fishing?
Make sure you do it at a place where there actually is fish.
Yes.
And we had nationwide advertising Campabilities in Ireland, and nobody caught the fish, so we ran off and bought a fish, because the fish were like, "Someone has to catch a fish." So we ran and bought the fish, and we were putting the fish out, and we're like, "Yeah, somebody caught a fish."
I think sometimes the bait makes a difference, the bait you use when you do it, because there was one year we caught 73 fish in 1 week. That was a lot, yeah. And so sometimes that makes a difference. But yeah, make sure there's fish in there, because it can be boring if nobody catches a fish. I know, was it 2 summers ago, Katrina's nephew, he's sighted. He was the first one to catch a fish. We didn't want to count that one because he wasn't visually impaired. You know, just to make sure they have a good sense of it.
Say something. We do fishing here at Kerry. It's such a fantastic environment for it with other kids. It's a fantastic learning experience for them. Interaction with nature, and you're connecting with something that's alive, and it has long-lasting learning experience all the way through adulthood.
Yeah, I mean, it is something they can take with them forever, which I absolutely love about that. And so, again, this is just saying you feel the environment. Independence is key for me. I just think that's so important. And then I also show them how to take it off the hook. And I also, like to do catch and release when possible. I know that some of the kids want to take them home, but I think, okay, we have to feel, what would a fish that's big enough to take home look like? We kind of talk about that, the difference between when you catch and release and when you take a fish home to cook it. So, and actually it does help to have a bucket of water nearby so that you can preserve the fish for a bit, so the kids who weren't there when you caught it can come see what the fish looked like. That is important. And so just my last slide, and I know that everybody here is here because you all want to promote the potential of every child and every person that you work with. But it does take time, it takes money, it takes patience, and it does take overcoming barriers. And I think overcoming barriers for insurance, overcoming attitudinal barriers, overcoming environmental barriers, but it's worth the time and energy that we do. So, does anybody have any questions?
The tactile sign language, is that an international, or is it predominantly in
No, actually, in that video, so Irish Sign Language, I understood maybe one word that they were saying in that video, but Katrina and I are both fluent in sign language. So American and Canadian sign are the same, but like Spanish sign, Irish sign are all different.
the tactile, specifically the tactile?
Actually, tactile sign is actually just sign that is felt by the person. So tactile sign is the same as the sign of that country.
Okay.
So like American sign, so you would just put your hand over somebody who's signing. And so, but like Irish sign would be the same tactily. You would do the same thing. But see, the difference is that Irish sign is a two-handed sign, so you use two hands to do Irish sign. In American Sign Language, you can actually do it with one hand. So it is a little more conducive to do recreation because you could be explaining something and the child could be feeling whatever or doing the activity. And so that's a good question. I can actually, there's a whole presentation just on how to teach all these things to people who are deafblind, because we've had kids who are deafblind come to our camp for years and years, and we've had to modify and adjust. And I don't know if you have the same thing in Ireland, but we have what's called interveners. They're people that work with people who are deafblind. So they're not an interpreter, and they're not a guide. It's a combination. And they explain the whole environment. They help with socialization, safety, directions. But anyway, that's a whole other day. We could do a whole day on that. But yeah, but if you want to know more about that, we can point you to some. Yes.
Hi, just in terms of working with children with autism, is there any further information that you can provide on like their sensory capabilities, for example?
Yeah, I would actually do it a lot the same way, because you still want to make sure that they're safe, they understand the whole activity, they see the whole, it's broken down. I would just, especially if it's a noisy environment like rock climbing, you might have to take them there when there's not a lot of other people. You know what I mean? And then, like, especially like horseback riding, it should be calm, and they should. I think some of the same concepts would carry over, but you have to adjust the environment for their needs. Because some kids with autism might be able to jump in fine without any modification, but some kids will really need it to be a lot more predictable. And the other thing I would definitely do before something new is do a social story before they get there, like everything from, you're going to wear a helmet, you're going to feel the horse, you're going to stand up on the, you're explaining. Do you guys use social stories here? Because we do that before any new thing. Katrina's more an expert on autism.
The only thing I would do in advance is to figure out the non-negotiables. So sometimes for kids with autism, it would include, maybe it's clothing optional, maybe, probably not. But maybe a helmet is not a choice for riding a horse. So we are going to have to work through that, and maybe in advance you decide, all right, we're going to let him sit on the horse with no helmet, but not let the horse walk, something like that. And if you consider those things in advance, it will help in the moment if you're faced with a crisis point where the child simply will not be able to engage unless they're accommodated in a particular way. So I'm kind of teasing about the clothing, but not really. We've had naked swimmers. I kept my suit on. The child didn't. It worked. But some safety equipment might be non-negotiable. So rock climbing, it's not a choice not to wear a harness. But here are some choices that you have. That kind of thing can help. So in the environment, you're more able to figure out, is this something we need to adjust or not?
And that's why I think the social story should entail what the child has to wear or do, so that they understand that before they get there. Okay.
Just on that one, Laura, Kathy, in terms of working with teenagers and young adults with autism, looking at orienteering, and had set up a sensory trail, where the young guys had to smell these little muslin bags which had different herbs in them, and then their control card had all the different herbs on it, and they had to smell the card and figure which one was their own.
Oh,
But
that's a good idea.
because the guys have set it up there.
That's a great idea. Hugo.
Just in your counsellors are obviously very key to the delivery of all these people in the field. Just wondering, as an organisation, are you trying to ensure that when they're using their facilitation skills, they're also trying to relate the skills that the kids are learning here today where they might be applicable to the wider life that they live in? So transferable skills. They're trying to coach them, engage them to think about how to transfer those.
Well, Hugo brought up a good point. Like I was saying, all of our sports, we actually have a recording sheet so that they can look at. We look at the skill level and the level of independence, and we look at the quality and the quantity of the skills. So if it's a product number, we can quantify that. They can take that home. What we haven't had in the past, what we're going to have is this independence checklist. Maybe you should help us validate this. But we want to look at what the child can do on their own and bring that home. So they're saying, if somebody tries to guide you or to make you follow them, you can tell them, no, thank you, I can do it on my own. So teaching them how to carry over what they learn and to do it as independently as possible when they get out there. And I love it when, not to say it mean, I can do that myself. Oh, thank you, but I can do this on my own, because there is a mean and a nice way to say those kind of things.
But there's also that whole idea of, you've been challenged to climb a rock face. Now, what other challenges might you face in the future?
Right.
And how might you bring the lessons of climbing a rock face to, whatever situation?
Yeah, we do. We teach advocacy, and all these role models that we bring in, we talk about that a lot, about how are you going to, we call it your comfort zone. How are you going to go outside of your comfort zone, and where else can you do that? What else are you afraid of? Kind of thing. No, that's a great point, yeah. And it's funny, everybody's comfort zone is different, Another one.
Do you ever invite parents to come along and engage with the kids, or even just participate or watch?
Yeah, that's a great point. Our last day, the kids get to pick their 3 favorite activities, and the parents watch all morning their 3 favorite things. And then we have our closing ceremonies. But the parents are invited to come anytime during the week. The thing is, a lot of the families live 5-6 hours away. I know here that would be almost out of the country, but in New York State's about 12 hours long, so some of the kids live far away. But we also have our newsletter on our website, and so the parents can actually see what the kids are doing every day and kind of have an idea. And again, this assessment form helps them. So if there's an activity that the parents didn't see, they can at least know how well they performed. Okay. No, these are good questions. Other question?
Just get back to the archery, because I found that quite interesting. Have you looked at measuring the participants' enjoyment or learning from the session by the environment that you conduct it in? Obviously they have a visual impairment, but there's a big difference between doing archery, say in the section of grass just out here, or going into a deep forest or on a mountain area. The adventure is obviously heightened.
You haven't been to Brockport, have you? No, we don't really have mountains in Brockport. No, but no, that's a good point. We don't really have a lot of choice where we offer some of our activities because of the limited, they're so afraid of, this is where you're going to do this. There's nobody on that area. But I think as far as who's around and what environment you could do it in, I think that's a good idea. Is that something you're interested in?
Well, just the smells, the rustling of the leaves,
right.
The sound of nature in the background, that adds to the experience.
Yeah, so one of our camps, actually 2 of our camps are in the Adirondacks, and so they have a lot more opportunity. They do their archery, they do a low ropes course in the woods and they do their archery in the woods. We don't have that luxury because we're on a college campus, but that would be really interesting because some of the kids go to all 3 camps, and so to see where they prefer to do the activities would be interesting. Because sometimes we don't have a choice of where we're going to hold the program because it's just whatever is conducive for that person. Yeah. We have a camp here. You should. Yeah, there is a Campabilities here.
I'm actually going to suggest, if you don't mind, what we might do is we've got Lauren's passport, so she's not going to get the okay. So Lauren's going to be around for a little bit more. I'm going to come out.
I'll be here all day, yeah.
So maybe if people have some questions, you can catch Lauren at one of the practicals or during lunchtime. And it would be great to hear more ideas. And it was great the sharing that was going on here this morning of ideas. I might just touch base with Dave because I know he's asking our very sleepy friends in Virginia and in Australia who are online and in other places like Balance Biddle if they had any questions. So, no questions. Okay, well, if it's okay, I'm going to say thank you so much to Lauren for the first input on the day. So thank you. I'm sure
and can I just, I'm going to just put in a plug. If anybody would like to come to New York to any of our camps, you're all invited. Our dates are on our website, campabilities.org.